act and call this special meeting together this morning, our special board meeting. We have a big morning in store, but we have two items that we do need to take care of, and I appreciate everyone making yourselves available at 8:30 Central on this pretty morning to get some business done. Then we move into committee chairs, and then, of course, on to Regent Burdine for our audit committee today. So thank you again for making yourselves available. As I said, we have two matters to conduct of business this morning: our institution compensation proposals and some faculty emeriti requests. Just as a reminder, we of course are being live streamed and recorded, as Mariah just mentioned, and this will be archived on our TBR website. Since our last quarterly board meeting, we have a new addition to our midst. I know you've all read about him. Some of you have likely corresponded with him or talked to him, but Governor Lee has appointed our new student regent, Caden Kelchin. Caden is a nursing and health science student at Walters State. He is a member of the college's debate team. He's been team captain, varsity debater, club president. He has completed his initial orientation with us and will join Regent Gill's Workforce Development Committee. His recommendations were just outstanding. So he's obviously making a big difference at Walters State, and we welcome him as our student regent. Regent Kelchin, good morning. And what have I missed that you would like to add?
Good morning. Frankly, that is a glowing way to review my last couple of years at Walters State. First of all, I just want to say thank you all so much for allowing me to join you all in this venture, and I'm really excited to get started. This is definitely new for me, but I'm hoping to catch up pretty quick.
That's all right. You've got a lot of folks to learn from. Caden has also already taken an exam this morning and made an A. So congratulations on a good start to the day. That's right.
Yeah, especially with a 30-minute ahead, I had to schedule it early, so I wasn't able to do it any other time.
Oh, well, I'm so glad that worked out for you. Thank you for making that accommodation. Regent White, of course, had to point out before we started the call that we only take A students on this board. So, Regent Kelton, we know you are that and more. So, all joking aside, we're so glad you're here. So, with that, let's make it official. And Secretary Perry, would you call the roll with our two questions?
Thank you, ma'am. Since this is an electronic meeting, there are two questions that need to be answered by regents for the record. First, can the regent simultaneously hear and speak with others participating in the meeting? And second, is the regent alone in the room? If the answer to both questions is yes, the regent can simply answer yes to both questions during roll call. Anyone who is not alone should identify any other people present in the room with the regent. When I call your name, please answer these two questions. Governor Lee, Regent Burdine,
yes to both.
Regent DeWitt,
yes to both.
Regent Gentile,
yes to both.
Regent George, Regent Harrell, Commissioner Hatcher, Regent Hooper,
yes to both.
Regent Kastner,
yes to both.
Regent Kelchin,
Yes to both.
Regent Powers,
Here and yes to both.
Madam Chair Reynolds,
Here and yes to both.
Commissioner Reynolds,
yes to both.
Regent Richardson,
Yes to both questions.
Regent Roberts,
Yes to both.
Regent Spurgeon, Regent Stevenson,
Yes to both.
Regent Barlin, and Regent White.
Here and yes to both.
Thank you. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you all again. Now, Regent Kelchin, this is another housekeeping item we have to undertake each time we meet electronically. Obviously, this is our most economically efficient way together, and the matters we discussed this morning, particularly these institutional compensation proposals, do require a timely review and action by our board. Given that this necessity to meet electronically is a non-controversial and routine item, I would propose that we adopt this by unanimous consent. Now, if anybody has an objection and would prefer a roll call vote on the need to meet electronically, of course, feel free to state your objection. Hearing none, the necessity to meet electronically is adopted. Thank you all very much. With that, let me turn the floor over to our Vice Chancellor, Alicia Fox, who will review these compensation proposals with us. And good morning, Vice Chancellor.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, Chancellor, members of the board. As you'll recall, at the June 24 meeting, the board authorized a compensation strategy that included the ability for institutions to submit proposals for across-the-board increases or payments on their compensation plan using uncommitted local funds if they had the capacity to do so. Staff received and evaluated compensation salary increase proposals from 10 institutions, as outlined in your materials and on the following slides. As you may recall, 7 institutions completed new or revised compensation studies in late 24. So this is the first opportunity to submit requests to address those compensation plan findings. Next slide, please. This slide shows the individual institutions and their proposals as submitted. The second column shows the total payroll amount per institution, and the third and fourth columns show the proposed increases for salary and benefits separately. The last column shows the implementation effective date of the institution's compensation plan. Next slide, please. The final slide shows the distribution by employment type, faculty, administration, professional, or support staff for the institutions who submitted compensation plan payments. As noted previously, these requests were submitted based on the individual college compensation studies conducted by TBR's contracted third-party vendor. These have been evaluated and reviewed by system office staff and are recommended for the board's approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have regarding this recommendation.
Any questions for Dr. Fox? I know everybody's had a chance to review this material. Hearing none, we will need a motion to approve the compensation proposals.
I move for approval.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent Powers. Any discussion or comments? If not, Secretary Perry, would you call the roll?
Regent Burdine.
Aye.
Regent DeWitt.
Aye.
Regent Hooper.
Aye.
Regent Kastner.
Aye.
Regent Keltgen.
Aye.
Regent Powers.
Aye.
Madam Chair Reynolds.
Aye.
Commissioner Reynolds.
Aye.
Regent Roberts.
Aye.
Regent Stevenson.
Aye.
And Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. To the Faculty Emeriti proposals, Vice Chancellor Jothany Reed, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Chancellor, and members of the board. It's always a pleasure to present to you the Faculty Emeritus candidates. TBR Faculty Emeritus Policy 5.02.01.10 governs the submission, review, and approval process. Essentially, college presidents nominate these candidates based on distinguished institutional services. Presidents may confer with other staff on campus, but the nomination is at the sole discretion of the president. Although there is no specific criteria, selection is historically based on the length of service, significant contribution, outstanding academic achievement, and exceptional embodiment of institutional values. Non-monetary benefits for faculty emeriti can be afforded at the discretion of the president, such as ID cards with the honorary title, office space, library privileges, or free admission to arts and athletic events. Nominations are reviewed by TBR Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and require both Chancellor and board approval due to the prestige of this title and the continuing status of representing the college and the system. The following faculty emeritus candidates are recommended for your consideration and approval: Brenda Amos, Associate Professor in Mathematics at Pellissippi State; Don King, Associate Professor of Communication Studies at Pellissippi State; Brenda Fincher, Associate Professor of Information Systems at Dyersburg State, and Gary Michael Stevens, Associate Professor of Electrical Engineering Technology at Southwest Tennessee. Presidential nominations and materials are included in your packet, and TBR staff recommends approval to the board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. Any questions for Dr. Reed this morning? If not, once again, we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Burdine, and a second.
This is Ross. I'll second.
Oh, thank you, Regent Roberts. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mariah, once again, would you call the roll?
Regent Burdine,
Aye.
Regent DeWitt,
Aye.
Regent Hooper,
Aye.
Regent Kastner,
Aye.
Regent Keltgen,
Aye.
Regent Powers,
Aye.
Madam Chair Reynolds,
Aye.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Aye.
Regent Roberts,
Aye.
Regent Stevenson,
Aye.
and Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for being prepared for this morning, because we have dispensed with our 2 agenda items in our special called meeting in short order. This will conclude the special board meeting. However, we're going to stay right here and move directly into our committee chairs meeting. But with that, the special called meeting is adjourned. We have several updates this morning in this committee chairs meeting and some policy previews, many of which you will see on our consent agenda upcoming in the December meeting. But Mariah, once again, to make it official, we will need to call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since this is an electronic meeting, there are 2 questions that need to be answered by regents for the record once again. As a reminder, those questions are: first, can the regent simultaneously hear and speak with others participating in the meeting? And second, is the regent alone in the room? If the answer to both questions is yes, the regent can simply answer yes to both questions during roll call. Anyone who is not alone should identify any other people present in the room with the regent. When I call your name, please answer these 2 questions. Governor Lee, Regent Burdine,
Yes to both.
Regent DeWitt,
Yes to both.
Regent Gentile,
Yes to both.
Regent George, Regent Harrell, Commissioner Hatcher, Regent Hooper,
Yes to both.
Regent Kastner,
Yes to both.
Regent Keltgen,
Yes to both questions.
Regent Powers,
Here and yes to both.
Madam Chair Reynolds,
Yes to both.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Yes to both.
Regent Richardson,
Yes to both.
Regent Roberts,
Yes to both.
Regent Spurgeon, Regent Stevenson, Regent Barlin, and Regent White.
Yes to both.
Madam Chair, your board is assembled.
Excellent. Thank you all. Well, another reason that it's important to be timely this morning is that the Chancellor has her annual budget meeting with the governor this afternoon, I think about 1:30. I know she is well prepared and always represents us so well. So Chancellor, good morning. What opening remarks might you have for us today?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you again for letting us start just a little bit earlier today to take care of our business in the special called session. But as we all know, we celebrated Veterans Day yesterday, and I would like to again say thank you to all of our veterans that are on the call today. And also just again, thank our colleges. All across the system yesterday, our colleges were holding special ceremonies and recognition events for our veterans. And one of the things that we have begun doing yearly is our Chancellor's Commendation for Military Veterans. We started this in 2020. This commendation is conferred based on nominations by each college's president. Nominees may be a student, member of the faculty and staff, or an alumni of the college, or a member of the community who are veterans or active service members and exemplify characteristics of service, honor, courage, commitment, and integrity. There are 40 Chancellor's Commendation honorees for 2024, one at each of the 13 community colleges and 24 colleges of applied technology, and one at the System Board Office. I would like to recognize our System Board Office selected Dr. Jeff Sisk from the retired Army National Guard as our Commendation Medal winner this year. Pellissippi State also awarded 3 Chancellor Commendations in celebration of their 50th anniversary this year. So a lot of great opportunities all across the state, and I was so honored to be able to attend the ceremony at Nashville State yesterday and personally be able to hand Mr. James Schrum his commendation, and it was so moving and touching because it was a surprise to him. And so I thank Dr. Jackson and her team for allowing me to be with them yesterday. I'd also like to take a moment to remind you of the groundbreakings, that we are hosting another round of groundbreakings next week and during the week of December 5th. You probably have already received the invitations, and I invite you to attend and participate in as many of these as you possibly can. Next Tuesday, November the 19th, we'll have the groundbreaking for TCAT Jackson's new Lexington campus, and in Jackson for the new Jackson Regional Workforce Training Center. This is a joint use facility for both TCAT Jackson and Jackson State Community College. On Wednesday, November 20th, we'll break ground for the new Dixon County Higher Education Center in Dixon and for the TCAT Henry Carroll Replacement Campus in Paris. On December 4th and 5th, we'll be back in East Tennessee. Wednesday, December 4th, groundbreaking for TCAT Jacksboro's new buildings, followed by Maynardville for TCAT Knoxville's new Union County facility. And on Thursday, December 5th, we'll break ground at TCAT Knoxville's main campus on Liberty Street, and then go to Elizabethton for the new Carter County Higher Education Center. And finally, after the holidays, on January 8th, we'll have the last groundbreaking for TCAT Nashville's new academic buildings and aviation replacement campus. And just to give you a little heads up, we do expect the governor to attend the groundbreaking on January 8th. So if you can, please be sure to put that one on your calendar. Also, just a quick reminder that it is fall graduation season coming up. Will be here soon, and Dr. Perry has sent you a calendar of all those dates. You, as always, are invited to attend, and I know many of you are asked to be speakers. And please be reminded that if you need help with any of your speaking remarks, Rick Locker is always so gracious to do that. And just finally, as our vice chair has said, we do have our budget hearing this afternoon, led by our Regent Gentile, who will be there to kick us off and get the process going. And then it will be myself, Randy Boyd, and our best dressed East Tennessee president will be there with his great shoes and bow tie. So we're looking forward to that this afternoon. All budget hearings are live streamed on the Department of Finance and Administration's website. So if you would like to tune in and watch those, please feel free to do so. And Vice Chair, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Great report, Chancellor. And I'll simply add, too, in addition to graduation season, we'll all start to receive the invitations for the various legislative breakfasts for the upcoming session. Some are in December. They spill into January, so take advantage of those as well if you can. Anything for the Chancellor this morning? And thanks to all of our campuses for the work with our veterans communities. This is really important in so many ways. And I thank you for the initiative you've undertaken as Chancellor with these Chancellor's commendations. It's very impressive.
Thank you. It is such an honor and a pleasure to do this.
Thank you. Well, and with your own family's distinguished military background, I know it means all the more to you. So thank you. Mariah has politely reminded me that I forgot an important piece of business. We called the roll, but I left out the necessity to meet electronically for this committee chairs meeting. So with that, we are, of course, meeting electronically as the most economically efficient way for us to review some matters timely prior to the December 10 meeting. I would propose that this be adopted by unanimous consent, as this has become a routine item for us. However, if you'd prefer to have a roll call vote, please say so. Hearing none, the necessity to meet electronically is adopted, and I thank Mariah for her help. With that, we have some academic policies and programs, student life matters to review this morning, several proposed policy revisions. And I believe I am turning once again to Vice Chancellor Reed for the first proposed revision.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to bring to you all revisions to TBR Policy 2.03.01.5. That is the academic retention and readmission at our TCATs. Essentially, the TCAT dental assistant faculty are proposing to revise the minimum grade requirement from a D or 60% per course to a B or 80% per course each term. This change is being proposed due to the nature of the program's scope of practice, which includes direct patient contact, as well as the need for the TCAT program employers to ensure patient safety during clinical externships and future employment. This policy, once approved, will go into effect in January 2025, and this would affect the 6 TCATs that have this program. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Questions for Dr. Reed? Hearing none, continue to study up. If you need her, let her know, and we will see this on our consent agenda next month. To Brian, you have a policy revision relating to research compliance and security.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, and good morning, Dr. Tidings and members of the board. I would like to update you for a few minutes on policy revisions to our general research policy with a new name called Research Compliance and Security. Next slide, please. Okay, if that's the only slide, then I'll just go through and explain that there are 4 major portions to the policy. Number 1 is that name change that I mentioned, which is really just to reflect that this is now a comprehensive research policy, given the changes we've made. We've updated sections 1 through 3 of the policy, which are the existing sections of the policy, to just tighten them up, make them more accurate, and to update them. We updated the human protections research provisions. We don't do, as a system, a whole lot of research that's covered by those provisions, but we do some, given that some of our surveys and educational evaluations and things like that are still subject to it. So we've updated that. We've updated the technology transfer provisions. Again, we don't do don't do much research that gets commercialized, but I guess we might theoretically. So we've updated those provisions as well. Next, we have included a section that is required by a new law in Tennessee in 2024. That law is loosely based on a National Presidential Security Memorandum, as well as certain provisions of the CHIPS Act, which aim to tighten up research and make sure that we are not giving research or doing research for our adversaries. We don't do enough research. There's a $50 million threshold to be covered by it, by the National Presidential Security Memorandum and the CHIPS Act. So what we have nevertheless done is take the good portions of that as it applies to our colleges and included them. For example, we have recommended that people take training where it might be helpful, provided by the National Science Foundation, and should anybody engage in anything that's covered by the export control provisions. Again, we don't do research regarding national security issues, arms, and things like that that might be covered by that act, but should we do it, we are going to require that training. The final portion of the act is really an incorporation of an existing guideline relating to foreign talent recruitment programs. As the name suggests, this is also something that is related to security, so it belongs probably in this comprehensive policy as opposed to floating separately. 2 portions of it. Number 1 First of all, a foreign talent recruitment program is really any kind of monetary prestige, travel, or other benefit that a foreign government, a foreign individual, or a foreign aligned actor provides to a researcher. Again, we don't do a whole lot of this, but we're covered by it, so we're going to comply by creating a policy that says if you are getting anything of value from a foreign government or other covered entity, then you must report it. And the college has to have a process related to conflicts of interest or otherwise to deal with it. The second portion of it says that there is almost nothing that is allowed to be received from malign foreign governments and actors, which are China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Again, not much really as a practical matter, but we're dotting I's and crossing T's by including that language and including in the policy. And that concludes my presentation on that issue.
Any questions for Brian Lapps on this? All right, thank you all for listening carefully to the details of this. And again, you'll see it on the consent agenda. Russ Deaton in your bow tie, I believe you have a policy for us with regard to our accreditors.
Indeed. Good morning, Vice Chair Reynolds, Dr. Tidings, members of the board. This will be a new policy that we are proposing on accreditation. Heretofore, TBR has not had one of these before. We have policies that mention accreditation elsewhere, but this would be a new policy for us. And it would really respond to initially federal government changes that were made in 2019 that essentially allowed each college to choose from among the different regional accreditors. To overly simplify, prior to that, essentially a college had to choose its regional accreditor that was in its area. So for instance, all of our colleges in the community college sector were from SAC-COC. After that 2019 federal change, it essentially made clear that colleges could choose from any of the 6 regional accreditors, and then it changed the name of those accreditors to institutional accreditors. So then fast forward to 2024, state policy also changed to essentially reflect that federal change, which essentially would allow colleges to freely choose its accreditor, and then to identify some ways of going about that process. So colleges would have to first notify the chancellor that they would want to pursue a change in its institutional accreditor, and then work with the system office to effectuate that change. It is, as you can imagine, a quite detailed process. And so nothing about the policy urges a change. It simply outlines the process by which a change would be made, starting with the chancellor, working with the staff, and ultimately coming back to this body, to the board, for approval. This applies to all TCATs and community colleges. And again, it simply outlines the process by which such a change would be made. The state statute requires this policy to be in place by the end of this calendar year, which is why it is on this agenda in preparation for December. And with that, Vice Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Anything for Russ on this? If not, thank you, sir. We will look to this in December as well. Dr. Lemming is up next with 2 proposed policy provisions. And Heidi, I just want to say to you and your team, you guys, I had the opportunity to head out to the TCAT Smyrna a couple of weeks ago now, where Heidi had her annual gathering of our student leaders and Skills USA leaders, student government leaders and Skills USA. It was really fun to see the group. They were amazing. They were engaged. They were having fun, but very serious about the responsibilities that they carry on behalf of their colleges and their fellow students. So thanks to you and the team for all the work you do. It's pretty amazing, and we appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Regent Reynolds, and I appreciate you being a willing participant in our team building activities that day.
That was fun. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. Before you today, I have 2 policies. The first is TBR Policy 3040100. It defines the process by which our institutions award student scholarships and financial aid at our community colleges. There's just a small revision to this policy that would now allow our institutions to offer service scholarships without the service portion of that, giving them flexibility on how to set the minimum hours if they were to offer service as part of the scholarship. This aligns to be a little bit more competitive with our scholarships to what our LGI partners are doing in this space. And the second policy is TBR policy 3050100. Again, looking at how we classify students for in-state and out-of-state tuition purposes, particularly for our students who are family members of veterans, and making it now more available to all family members of veterans to get in-state tuition. And those are just two small changes to policy that are before you for consideration.
Two small changes, but have big impacts in a helpful way, I hope. Any questions or thoughts for Dr. Lemming? All right. Well, thank you all. We've moved through that in fairly good order. And as always, if you have follow-ups, please feel free to reach out. Thank you again, Heidi. Vice Chancellor Fox, you are back up with a finance and business operations update.
Well, good morning again. Thank you, Madam Chair, Chancellor, members of the board. So this morning I will be brief on my preview for December finance topics. Next slide, please. Thank you. At the December meeting, as is customary, I will be presenting the FY 24-25 October budget revisions for your consideration and approval. This will include budget revisions for the community colleges, TCATs, and the system office between the submittal in May of the FY 25 proposed budget and then the submittal of the FY 25 revised budget that colleges submitted in late October. We will also review the LGIs, or the locally governed institutions, debt service certifications at this time. And then the second item, as is an informational item for you today, I'm just calling your attention to a timing change for our FY26 agenda item that is customary tuition and fee recommendation. On this slide, you will see a table showing the description of the action and then the previous timing versus the new timing of these recommendations. So in short, the timing of tuition and fee approvals has long been out of sync with the timing of our proposed budget submittals for our colleges. So as you can see on the table here, historically, THEC has established a guiding tuition range at their November meeting, and then they've set the binding range at their May meeting. Once the binding range was set, TBR staff would then present a recommendation to this board at our June meeting. However, the deadline for submitting proposed budgets is the first week of May. So obviously, in an ideal model, our schools would like to have tuition information before they submit their proposed budget. So THEC, thank you, Regent Gentile, has heard our request for a change and is moving up their binding range vote to their February meeting this year. So hooray for that. But however, our board meeting is also being moved up to February from March. So this is the reason I am sharing this information with you today, just to get it on your radar to let you know, one, that is moving up, and two, that we will have a special called session to approve tuition and fees for FY26. So at our February board meeting, I will present our recommendation for FY26 tuition and fees as informational only. So I will present that then, and then the board will take action in a special session to be scheduled, which will be in March of 2025. And as an additional note, THEC did meet last week in their normal November meeting and approved a guiding tuition range for FY26 of 0 to 4%. Again, this is just informational, getting this on your minds early to let you know of this change in timing for when we take up this important agenda item. But that is my overview and preview for December, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have about this informational item.
And Regent Gentile, feel free to chime in here if there's anything you'd like to add from a THEC perspective.
Yeah, so and thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Fox as well. We have, since the Focus Act, have the binding authority, and we always waited for the General Assembly to shut down with their budget before we set our binding range. However, we knew that put institutions in a bind. And this year, we're just going to see how it looks to bring that decision up to February after we know what the governor's budget is going. So right now, like I said before, the range is 0 to 4%. Look forward to having ongoing conversations with TBR to identify your true needs. So thank you.
Thank you. Regent White, as chair of our finance committee, anything from your side?
No, other than this makes a ton of sense to do it this way, and I'm very happy we were able to move as quickly as we did to adopt this schedule.
Excellent, thank you. Anything for Dr. Fox? All right, more to come in December, but these all sound like positive changes. Thank you, Alicia. Brian Lapps, our general counsel, I believe you are back up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one should be fairly quick. I'll talk about the two policies at the same time. A new law was passed by the Tennessee General Assembly providing for foster parent training leave. Essentially, an employee is allowed to take 25 hours of paid leave that does not count against sick or annual or any other leave in order to undergo foster parent training. And that's a one-time event. And then every year, a foster parent is allowed to take 8 hours or up to 8 hours of foster parent training leave, again, without being docked pay or otherwise having to use leave. So this policy operationalizes that requirement and essentially says that the employee has to provide notice, and Child Protective Services the Department of Children's Services will then provide the proof that he or she went and the certificate, and that will create the ability to be excused. The next policy is just a very small revision to the parental leave policy that tracks those changes and just creates and refers to the previous policy, the one I just discussed. So nothing further to add.
Questions, comments?
I'll just say here.
Yes.
Really. I just said here. That's all. In other words, I love that. I think that's a wonderful thing. And I know that Jeremy Harrell, if he was here, would probably love it. And it's significant to the governor, I'm sure, because of his passion for adoption. So thank you. That's all.
No, well said, Regent Powers. And Regent Harrell is celebrating his anniversary today as we speak. So, which is why he's not with us, but we wish them well. And you're right, this is very close to his heart.
And this is a broader state policy as well?
Yes, sir. This is, it's required by state law, so every state agency will be having one.
Gotcha.
All right, thank you all. To Vice Chancellor McCormick, an external affairs update this morning.
Well, good morning, Vice Chair Reynolds, chancellors, members of the committee. I will be very brief. I will start with the report that we send to THEC every year. Dr. Sisk has presented this to you before regarding our workforce development contact hours on campuses. And this report, as he has again presented it before, but it goes to THEC to be vetted and finalized. And he wanted to be able to show you all this final report in December. Here's a preview of it. Dr. Sisk, if you are on the line, if you want to join in for any questions that members may have.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. McCormick. Just wanted to note the THEC final approval of the submitted workforce hours by our community colleges was done on October 1st. So just after the September board meeting, you notice we're at 1.4 million hours. This is a tremendous number. The thing that I like most is the number of rejected hours by THEC has dropped from 30% about 6 years ago to less than 1%. This past year, our colleges are doing a great job on vetting, reviewing what they're submitting, working hand in hand with Regent Gentile's auditors and staff, at THEC to ensure, because for our community colleges, this is part of their outcomes-based funding formula. A lot of money's on the lines. We want to make sure it's correct. But 1.4 million hours, not only are we exceeding pre-pandemic, we've reached and now exceeded pre-pandemic numbers. So an exciting number to present. Thank you, Dr. McCormick.
Thank you, Dr. Sisk, and I'm just proud of you and the campuses for all that you've done to be efficient and make sure that this report is accurate. So thank you for that. And then the only other thing that I need to announce to you all this morning is that in December, Chris Perkins will be presenting the fiscal year 24 fundraising report. We do this every year from campuses. We don't have that to show you all this morning because Chris is still compiling that information from the colleges. But again, that will be presented in December. And Vice Chair, that is all we have to report this morning.
Excellent. Questions or comments for Kim? All right, thank you all. Once again, we are getting our work done in an efficient manner this morning. Chancellor, before we close out this portion of our morning meetings, you want to talk about December 10 or anything else on your mind?
Well, absolutely. We are very much looking forward to our board meeting at the system office on December 10th. And remember, this is just a one-day meeting. We'll be hosting board members for a holiday luncheon immediately after the official business of the board. So looking forward to a great holiday themed event. Thank you all for planning to participate with us.
Absolutely. We look forward to that. Anything for the Chancellor? Right, excellent. I know you've had December 10 on your calendars for some time, with the exception of Regent Kelton, who's getting caught up on his calendar, but we will look forward to seeing you that day in person, Regent Kelton, and welcoming you once again. On a couple of sad notes, you guys, since the last time we were together, and I know Mariah has made you aware of these. Obviously, Hurricane Helene took its toll in East Tennessee and Western North Carolina since the last time we were together. I know everyone has reached out and done things for the region, and our central office did a remarkable job working with our colleges to load up at least one, maybe two, Chancellor, tractor trailer trucks and take supplies to the region.
There were actually four. Loads.
Four. Oh my goodness.
It was a remarkable effort by all of our community and technical colleges to get water to the region. And then there was a fundraising amount too that was also given to the two technical colleges that were primarily had students that were affected in that region. So that would have been Elizabethton and Morristown.
Well, thanks to everyone on the board and to everyone across our system for your generosity and support at a very difficult time that continues, I know. Correct, Regent Burdine?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to take years to recover from this, but thank you. And I'll tell you, a year from now, we need to continue to support. We're going to need more help. 6 months, year. Once the media quits paying attention, that's when we're really going to need the help.
Understand. And Regent Ross, I know you were not personally impacted, but because of your generous spirit, I know this hit you hard as well.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. It was in Washington County alone. There were at least 43 bridges and roads that were totally washed out and decimated. And anyone who's been up in this area, the topography is quite challenging, and if a road or a bridge is out, we may be looking at adding dozens of miles or minutes to a travel, and it just kind of adds to the hardship of the folks here. So the support from TBR was incredible. So I just want to deeply express my thanks. So thank you all so much for your support and just keeping us in thoughts and prayers.
Absolutely. Thank you. And as Mariah let us know, sadly, our former board secretary, Sonja Mason, lost her mother here a few weeks ago. I've communicated with her a little bit since, and obviously it's a huge hole in her heart. She retired from us in no small part to be able to tend to her mother and stepfather. It's a tough time for Sanja. Keep her in your thoughts and prayers as well. And then, of course, in the most difficult news was for our friend Mary Lou Apple and former colleague in the loss of her husband, Colonel Jim Apple. I know it hurt all of our hearts to hear this news, as both she and Jim are so active and engaged in so many ways. His celebration of life will be this coming Saturday in Tullahoma. If you need any further details, please don't hesitate to reach out to Mariah. I have communicated just by text with Mary Lou, as I know the chancellor has as well. She is an incredibly strong woman, and her faith is sustaining her at this very difficult time. But I know she would appreciate hearing from you all. So continue to think of Mary Lou and her great family at this very difficult time. With that, and importantly, we will see you in just about 4 short weeks. As I turn the gavel over to Regent Burdine for the Audit Committee, let me wish everyone a happy and safe Thanksgiving. Again, thank you for making time this morning. If there are no objections, we will conclude the meeting of committee chairs. And once again, Regent Burdine, the floor is yours for Audit Committee, my friend.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning. As chair of the Audit Committee, I'm calling the committee meeting to order. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, sir. Since this is an electronic meeting, there are 2 questions that need to be answered by regents for the record. First, can the regent simultaneously hear and speak with others participating in the meeting? And second, is the regent alone in the room? If the answer to both questions is yes, the regent can simply answer yes to both questions during roll call. Anyone who is not alone should identify any other people present in the room with the regent. When I call your name, please answer these 2 questions. I'll first start with our Audit Committee members, and then we'll check to see if any other regents may be remaining on the line. Chairman Burdine.
Yes to both.
Regent DeWitt.
Yes to both.
Regent Kastner.
Yes to both.
And Regent White.
Yes to both.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum. I'll now check for other regents who may have joined or may be remaining. Governor Lee. Regent Gentile.
Yes to both.
Regent George. Regent Harrell. Commissioner Hatcher. Regent Hooper. Regent Keltgen.
Yes to both.
Regent Powers.
You're a yes to both.
Madam Chair Reynolds.
Yes to both.
Commissioner Reynolds. Regent Richardson.
Yes to both.
Regent Roberts.
Yes to both.
Regent Spurgeon. Regent Stevenson. And Regent Barlin. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. Everybody knows what's coming next. This meeting has been being held electronically as is the most economically efficient way, and the matters to be considered require timely action and review by the Audit Committee. Given that the necessity to meet electronically is a non-controversial and routine item, I propose that necessity be adopted by unanimous consent. Anyone who wants to have individual votes on the necessity to meet electronically should feel free to object, in which case we will have a roll call vote. If there is no objection, the necessity to meet electronically is adopted. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the necessity is adopted. And we'll now turn it over to our Chief Audit Executive, Mr. Mike Batson.
Thank you, Chair Burdine. Good morning, everyone. Welcome Regent DeWitt to the Audit Committee, and also Regent Keltgen to the board as a whole. Glad to have you with us, and thank you to everyone for attending. As always, we'll get started with recommendation and finding logs. If you have any questions as we go forward, just please feel free to stop me and let me know. We had 4 recommendations for Chattanooga State that were completed this time around, as well as 1 for Southwest. Several information systems recommendations have been closed out, and we'll discuss those a little later this morning. Couple that I want to point out to you in particular, as we mentioned last meeting, Roane State is still working on an accounts receivable issue. It started out as a repeat state audit finding. They've had some trouble getting that one rectified, but it looks like now they have a process in place. Don't want to call that one closed yet, but it looks likely that they have remedied that situation going forward. Due to the lateness of it in the audit period, it will likely be another repeat state audit finding, but we feel better that they do have an automated process in place that's going to help with that. Also on page 7, the one state audit finding this time around is a little old, but it was from fiscal year 2021-22 audit for Cleveland State in terms of their bank reconciliations. They've had some trouble getting those caught up, but this past summer, TBR arranged with Cleveland State and Pellissippi to have some help from Renee Moore at Pellissippi State. And it looks like they've gotten those caught up. We're still reviewing things from an audit perspective to make sure that all the boxes are checked, but we appreciate Renee Moore from Pellissippi helping out with Cleveland while they were short-staffed and has been able to get them caught up on the bank reconciliations. Again, that one could still be a repeat finding. Don't want to speak for the comptroller's office, but based on the lateness in the audit period, that could still potentially be a repeat, but they're in a much better place now than they have been in terms of those important reconciliations. Moving on to audit reports and external reviews. I'm sorry, getting tongue-tied. Several that I want to bring to your attention just briefly. TSAC program review at 2 colleges, TCAT Dixon and TCAT McKenzie. Congratulations to McKenzie. They had no findings or recommendations. TCAT Dixon did have a few that they have already worked through, and they have had that audit closed out by THEC also. So they were able to remedy those pretty quickly. Just a few minor recommendations, and I think 2 instances where they may have had to pay back a little bit of money there. So next up, Tennessee Department of Health, ELC audits. That's epidemiology and laboratory capacity for prevention and control of emerging infectious diseases, grant monitoring and ethics reviews, both at TCAT Dixon and Columbia State, resulted in no findings or recommendations. So congratulations to them on those reports. For this period, we have 1 state audit report at Nashville State for fiscal year 22 and 23. Congratulations to Nashville State and President Jackson on no findings resulting from that audit. So that's always great news. A lot of hard work, and we appreciate what they've done at Nashville State. So congratulations to them. Next up, internal audit reports. Just a few that I want to bring to your attention. If there are any others you have questions about, be glad to answer those. Jackson State, Jackie in our office has completed the HERF reporting review. As you remember, a couple years ago, we required audits of the college's reporting of HERF spending as required by the Department of Education. We had a couple of recommendations there. There were some errors in amounts that we found. Jackson State has made the necessary changes to correct the reporting errors there. Also, they did not always use the proper naming conventions required by Department of Education. That has been corrected, as well as a link that they had that's a required link to Department of Education Stabilization Fund Transparency Portal. That link has also been corrected. So thank you to Jackson State for getting those issues with HERF reporting straightened out. At Southwest Community College, Linda Soder, relatively new auditor there, has completed a purchasing card expense audit. One recommendation there, they were not necessarily completing the sign out for the cards as required by their policy. The only real issue there. Fortunately, we didn't see any indications of improper spending related to P cards, which is always a risk. So they seem to have really good controls there over their process. And so a good audit there. We're always glad to see the P card audits to keep an eye on things because that is a risk area. So thank you to Linda for that audit. Next up, it's that time of the year for President's expense audits. And for those of you that are new, I'll give a little background here on President's expense audits. They're required by the state legislature under Tennessee Code for any higher education institutions that the presidents or chancellors receive an annual audit of their expenses related to their office. TBR is required to audit 30% of our college presidents or the chancellor each year. And it includes any discretionary expenditures made by, at the direction of, or for the benefit of the system head or the president at each institution. One note I do want to make, and thank you, Madam Vice Chair Reynolds, for pointing this out. We no longer have presidents' houses. Dyersburg sold theirs their past year, so we no longer have any president's houses for our community colleges. So that's, for an auditor, that's a relief. Glad to have those checked off. But that would have been one of the things included in the audit. As I mentioned, we audit at least 30% each year. This year we did 5. We determined those based on the length of time since the last audit. We look at several factors for others, such as the amount of expenditures, any previous findings or issues that we've had, and as well as turnover in the president's office. This year we audited Chattanooga State, Montlow, Southwest, Walter State, and Chancellor Tiding's office. Congratulations to all those. No findings, no recommendations other than some minor fixes along the way, but nothing in the reports in terms of findings. So always glad to see that with those president's expense audits. A couple of notes related to that. This information is summarized in your materials, but total travel expenses this year for the presidents for fiscal year 24 went down slightly from $173,000 in 23 to $150,000 in 24. The average travel was about $10,700, so down a little bit there. Business meals and hospitality, which is another thing we're required to track as part of these audits, went up about $20,000 from $140,000 to $160,000, so relatively minor increase there from 23 to 24. Covered a lot of information there on the president's expense audits, again, required each year. And I will note that we appreciate the staff of those colleges, their finance offices and their president's offices. Those audits, unfortunately, come at a bad time. We're required by statute to do them before the end of the year, which coincides with financial statements, budgets, and a lot of other things. So we really appreciate the patience of the finance staff at those colleges in assisting with those audits while they're quite busy with other things. Next up, the audit reports and reviews. I've covered highlights of internal audits, external reviews, as well as the comptroller's office. There are a few other reports in the materials that we didn't touch on. If anybody has any questions on those, I'd be glad to pull those and answer those for you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Regent Verdun, next up is a system-wide internal audit updates. Just a brief update, try to keep us on time. We still have 3 openings out there, Cleveland State, Jackson State, and Montlow. I know we've recently had a couple of applicants for both of those, so looking forward to looking at those. Hopefully we can get them filled soon. We're working with the campuses there and the presidents to make sure they have the coverage they need for those positions. Another item to bring to your attention, the Internal Auditors Conference, we did sort of a mini retreat this year. Some of you that have been around know we've done a much larger 2 or 3 day retreat in the past. This year we kind of scaled it down to a day and a half, but had some really good training, just some general ethics training from Daniel Porter, who's part-time on our staff. We did some fraud training, as well as objectivity and ethics for internal audit session. And also we had a session with Wanda Bodie, the Senior Director for Compliance and Eligibility with the NJCAA, talked to us a little bit on their compliance program and their rules and regulations. So really glad to have Ms. Bodie participate. We appreciate her time. Very, very helpful information for us there. If there are any questions on any of the highlights, president's expenses at this point.
Hey, Mike, it's Tom.
Yes, Regent Mike.
Do we have kind of set per diems for meals and hotel rooms?
Yes, sir. Those are in the TBR policy. It sets the per diem.
Okay.
For in-state and out-of-state travel. Basically follows the CONUS rates.
Gotcha.
So,
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Next up, for informational purposes, we're required each year to review salaries and budgets for the system auditors. Those are presented to you on page 120 of your materials. We really just reporting on the salaries. We still have, as I mentioned earlier, 3 vacant positions. This year we saw some moderate increases across the system. Those are primarily related to the 2 new positions that we had filled under the new salary plan recommendations. So that really helped salaries increase a little bit there. In your materials, the salaries for the 3 vacant positions at Motlow, Cleveland, and Jackson are actually the salaries that were for the last person who was in that position a couple of years ago. We also have the ranges available for the new positions. Jackson State, that range is 71,000 to 89,000. Motlow, 94 to 97,000, and in Cleveland, 87 to 109. So those are resulting from the salary study that we talked about earlier in the year. So we have those new ranges posted for those positions. Also, the information available to you is on operating budget and travel budget for the auditors for your information. Again, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to cover those, but those have really stayed the same over the past couple of years. Regent Burdine, this concludes my informational report. So thank you for your.
Thank you, sir. These are informational items and require no action, but let's move on to revisions of internal audit plans for 2025.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. We're required each year to present and report to you the revised audit plans as well as our original audit plans. Revisions to the audit plans, for those of you that are new, can take several different paths. A president may ask for a different audit to be done. Something new may come up. Investigations may come up that may take the place of something else, or an audit may take longer than anticipated. And those will show up in the revisions to those plans. We didn't include revisions for the open position audit staff. There are only a few significant revisions, and those are really related to other priorities coming up or investigations coming up that had not been planned. Everything else is pretty minor and pretty routine there. Glad to answer any questions that anyone has on this.
Any questions?
Thank you, Chair Burdine. That completes my report on the revised audit plans for fiscal year 25.
Thank you. This does require a roll call vote. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Second?
Second, this is
Second.
Deanne.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, please call the roll for a vote.
Chairman Burdine,
Aye.
Regent DeWitt,
Aye.
Regent Kastner,
Aye.
and Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Mike, back to you for review of internal audit charters.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. As most of you know, we have internal audit charters that lay out the responsibilities of the campus auditors, their presidents, as well as the relations to the audit committee. We have two new ones this year for this meeting for your approval for Columbia State and for Southwest. Due to the fact we had new auditors come in for those positions, no changes to the audit committee charters except for the auditor and the president signing a new charter there. So, Chair Burdine, this concludes my report on internal audit charters.
Thank you, sir. This also requires a roll call vote. Do I have a motion?
I'm so move. Deanne.
Thank you, Dan. Second?
I'll second. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, back to you.
Chairman Burdine,
Aye.
Regent DeWitt,
Aye.
Regent Kastner,
Aye.
Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, ma'am. Mike, back to you.
Thank you, Regent Burdine. Next up, review of salaries and staffing for system-wide internal audit office. The audit committee is required to approve those, and so those are presented in your information. Just a couple of notes. We're continuing the use of part-time investigative auditor Daniel Porter. Again, glad to have him. We re-upped him for another 6 months, and again, glad we were able to do that. As we mentioned previously, the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Organizational Effectiveness position moved under system-wide internal audit. That position is currently vacant, and we are working with several other offices to reassess that position going forward. You see cost of living increases for most of the personnel. The Director of Internal Audit position was reclassified as an Executive Director position due to additional responsibilities and reporting, as well as for the Investigative Audit Manager position. So if there are any questions about our office salaries, be glad to answer those before the vote.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions?
Chair Burdine, this completes my report on system-wide internal audit salaries.
Thank you, sir. This does require a roll call vote. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved, Tom.
Thank you, sir. Second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, back to you.
Chairman Burdine,
Aye.
Regent DeWitt,
Aye.
Regent Kastner,
Aye.
Regent White.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, ma'am. This concludes the agenda for the public session. Does anyone have any further business to come before the committee?
This is Deanne. I just want to say a heartfelt thanks to Mike Batson for onboarding and giving me some background. I'm looking forward to this committee and the opportunity to learn about our institutions. And Regent Burdine, I appreciate your leadership and support in this. And I do apologize. I was not able to get my camera working this morning and love to, well, I appreciate I get to see your smiling faces. I'm sorry I can't share mine, but we'll get the technology figured out before the next such endeavor. Thank you.
Well, we prefer to see your smiling face too, but we will soon enough. So thank you.
Thank you, Regent DeWitt. It was great to meet with you and go through your questions.
Public portion of this meeting stands adjourned. So thank you, everyone, for your time. The public session is concluded, and board members, board officers, and key audit personnel should have received information to join the executive session virtual meeting. See you in just a few.
Hey, Miles, who sent
Yes,
that
sir.
email? Who sent the email link for the next meeting? Did Kate send that?
Yes,
Yes.
Kate.
Okay.
Yeah.
This helps me find it.
Okay, yeah, got it. All right, see you in a minute.
Thank you.
Thank you.